All right, welcome back, guys. Today we have Katy Valentine. Katy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Katie. I am an American living in Ireland, which has its own little fun cachet to it. And I'm a spiritual strategist and coach, and I help leaders and entrepreneurs experience healing and learn to increase the ripple effect here on planet Earth.
The ripple effect. I love that. We're going to
Yeah.
get to that. But first, let's talk about your ADHD journey or what that looks like for you.
Yeah. So this is a fairly recent realization for me. And I laugh a little bit because I have a lot of experience with therapy and the mental health field and doing my own inner work. And I've actually referred people to potential ADHD counseling and testing before, but never quite put all the pieces to my own journey until really recently. So
Yeah.
a few months ago, I run my own business, my own coaching business, and I have a really challenging time making a backwards plan and sticking to deadlines. My poor VA it has a lot of last minute, like, oh, what about this, that, or the other, and me
Yeah.
finally getting all the pieces in place. And trying to make a backwards plan for the year was really frustrating me. I couldn't put all the pieces together. I couldn't see it. This was a problem for me when I was writing my dissertation.
Mhm.
Trying to make a backwards plan for a multi-chapter book was really, really challenging. I ended up just kind of not doing it, or definitely didn't meet any of the deadlines if I did do it.
That's a challenge for a lot of people. I've worked with several clients
Oh,
on their
yeah.
dissertations, and it
Yes.
really is like, I know you have a coach too, but like a lot
Yeah.
of people will hire a coach to have somebody that's like holding the big picture for
Yeah.
them. Is that what
And I
you're?
think that's hard. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. I think that's hard for a lot of people, but ADHD and neurodiverse people are going to have a harder time
Yeah.
with that. And I thought, I'm very well educated. I'm bright. Conceptually, I can see that this should be easy and it's not. Why isn't it?
Mhm.
I kind of had this revelation. Maybe it's because you have ADHD or you have ADHD tendencies. So at the
Yeah.
tender age of 46, I have this aha moment. Started doing even more research and reading because I'd already done quite a bit for my own clients in the
Hmm.
past. And I thought I fit enough of these where I think that this is a thing.
Yeah.
So I read out, hired my own ADHD coach
Mhm.
to get a little bit of support, a little bit of help. And I went downstairs and I think I said to my husband, I think I might have ADHD. He looked at me and was like, is this a revelation to you?
That's always the like the people that know you best in life are always like, you
Yeah,
think? Like,
right. It's like, yeah, well, yeah, it is a revelation. But it was a hard identity thing,
mm.
actually,
Tell
for
me more
me.
about that. What do you mean?
Yeah, because, and I don't know, I guess I had really unconsciously pigeonholed someone who's neurodiverse, someone with ADHD,
Mm.
someone with this, someone with that. And I try really hard not to pigeonhole people because I don't think that's helpful.
Yeah.
But accurate recognition of how our brains work is exceedingly helpful
Yeah.
in life. But I just never thought of myself as someone with ADHD because I had unconsciously thought this must be relate to 5-year-old boys who can't stop running around.
Yeah. Yeah,
Even
which
though I
is the common
consciously
thing
knew,
for people to think,
yeah,
right?
right. And I consciously
Mhm.
knew that wasn't the case, but I still had that unconscious bias.
Yeah. And so many people are getting diagnosed at about, we are the same age. You
Oh,
mentioned
wow.
46, so we're the
Mm-hmm.
same age. But so many people are coming to me like in their 40s and in their 50s getting diagnosed just recently. And yours is just kind of like you're realizing you have these tendencies.
Yeah.
But another one that you mentioned was the sensory overload. Tell us how that shows up for you.
Way sensory overload. So, especially sound, some material and things that are touching my skin. So
Mm,
my family would laugh when I was little because I would always get shoes that were like 3 sizes too big.
yeah.
You'll never see me in heels ever, ever, ever. I just don't wear them.
Yeah.
It's not worth it to me. They're not only uncomfortable, it's the only thing I can think about. But sound is the really big one. And so even I remember as a teenager, falling asleep would be really challenging if I was
Me
in a
too.
group setting, slumber
Mhm.
party, camp, whatever it was. And when I discovered the magic of those little foam earplugs, my life literally changed. Like really just literally changed.
That's a good
Loud
tip for people.
concerts. Oh, yes. Now I have loop earplugs. They're also amazing and they're
Yeah.
probably a little better for the environment. Going riding in a car with people who are playing the music. I'm always
Mhm.
asking, can you turn down the music? People's cell phones going off,
Mhm.
the little beeps will just send my brain into total overdrive, and it sends me into an aggravated anger state that
Mm.
takes a significant amount of time to come down from.
Yeah.
So my husband, I don't think quite understood that when we first moved in together, because he would say, "You never answer when I call." I was like, "Well, I don't answer when you call because my phone's on silent.
Mine, it's
Because
always on
otherwise,
silent constantly.
yeah, yeah." I was like, "If it's not on silent, I won't get any work done, and then I'll be answering it. And I can't just go from the beep back to my normal state of getting things done."
Yeah.
So those are really, really big ones. And that's exposure therapy does nothing for that.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah, at least in my case, exposure
Yeah.
therapy or just increased exposure does not help that situation. So I finally have had to accept it and then find the workarounds that work for me.
Yeah. And I was telling Katie that I have some sensory issues. Some of it is like overhead lights at, especially at night, but some of it is overhead lights, especially if it's a time that I'm supposed to be winding down. I have a really hard time with the overhead lights. Even though I will complain during the day about a room being too dark. And so it's kind of like make up your mind. Um, And then one big one is like I have a hard time with like big box stores or Walmarts or things like that. It's the lighting, it's the people, it's the like all the products. It's just too much. It's like an overload. You
Yeah, it's a
mentioned you
visual
mentioned you had an
overload, isn't it?
experience.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm the same. And I was reflecting. Definitely those when I'm in a being jostled, I don't like it. But especially if I'm with someone else and I'm having to navigate them and the crowd and the sensory overload and all the stuff. I find if I'm by myself, I navigate it much more easily because I can really kind of hyper focus on the path in front of me
Yeah.
and make my own decisions. But trying to take care of someone else and myself is too much. So I don't have children, and this is probably so I've never had to try to navigate this like with a stroller or
Mhm.
something like that. But even with
Yeah.
another adult who's thinking and walking and making their own conscious decisions,
Yeah.
you know,
I think my workaround for that is I just don't navigate them. So the problem that my husband has is I will just disappear. And
yeah,
because
just
I will
back in the
see
car.
something that I want to go see or whatever. And so I just go and I don't say anything. And he's like, we're gone. And I'm like, I know. And he's kind of just decided that that's just how life is.
And
And
then your
that's
phone's
okay.
on silent, so we can't call you.
Exactly. I'll
Yeah,
check it though. I'll check it if
yeah.
I've lost him. But another thing is I feel like a bad person because he can't he can't whistle around me because it's just such a pitch that like it hurts. It actually physically hurts my ears. And so we were in the truck. I think this was just yesterday or the day before, and he starts whistling to the song, and I'm like, can you not? And I'm like, if anybody were in the car with us, I would look like such a jerk.
Yeah.
But it's just it hurts. Like I don't know what else to do except like ask him to please not do it or put in, like you mentioned the loops. Those are
Yeah.
fantastic. I found just some generic product too on Amazon that I got before I knew about loops. That just kind of like it's like an earplug, but it has like a hole through it, so it lets in a
Oh,
certain amount of sound. And
right.
actually, I got those because I would go um, on trips with my friend and her kids. My kids are kind of quiet. Her kids were very loud, though, and just rambunctious boys, And I noticed the backs of my ears would be in pain by the end of the trip.
Hmm.
But if I put in these earplugs, I didn't have a problem, and so that was super helpful. But yeah, there's just sometimes where I'm like, I just feel like I kind of look like a jerk, but I'm just standing up for what I need. Like,
I know. You just need it. Yeah.
but you mentioned,
And
oh, go ahead.
oh, I was to say the other thing that I just can't do is ticking, like when people make a little ticking noise.
Mm.
So on podcasts, on TV, I'll just turn it off. They've lost me
There's certain
because I can't
sounds that
tolerate
my
it.
kids will make where I'm like, again, I feel like a jerk, but I'm like, did you not? Like, one of them will like pop their mouth a certain way, and I'm like, mm-mm, or crack their knuckles. And it just makes me seem like I'm trying to control everyone,
Right.
but it's
Yeah.
just I don't know, I'm just doing what I can for myself so that you mentioned like that, like getting really angry and having to come down from it. And sometimes it's just a matter of like it frightens me or it's painful or yeah, it is
Yeah.
very agitating. So I wanted to talk about that because I just want to kind of normalize that for people. Like if you're
Yeah,
having
totally.
sensory issues, and I agree, like I have found the sheets that work. If I sleep in a hotel that has like a
Yeah.
scratchy pillowcase or something, I'm not going to sleep well. You mentioned that like group setting. I was a Girl Scout leader and we went to SeaWorld to sleep, which
Oh, bless you.
I love the ocean. Like we're in the tanks, we're in the room that's like real dark and it has the tanks. And I was like, oh, that's going to be amazing. It's going to be so great. I did not sleep the whole night and I could not sleep. And I think that group setting is part of what that was, like the noise from the other people, like just, yeah, that's very interesting. But I just
Yeah.
want people to know, like, if you have sensory issues, like I think a lot of people feel like they're being rude when they stand up for what they need. Or I know some of my friends that have ADHD that have children, like sometimes them physically needing you, wanting to be
Yeah, it
held
can
or
be too
something like that
much.
can be very difficult sometimes because of sensory issues. And that, then you have a whole mom guilt situation going on.
Right.
But I want to make sure we have time for everything. So I'm going to move on from this. But
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
mentioned procrastination being a problem for you.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things where I know in my head that procrastination is usually the avoidance of a feeling
Mm. Yes, you know.
and not, yes, not actually procrastinating the task, but something about the time management piece, which isn't horrible for me, but the procrastination piece comes into play because I'm really good at getting things done at the last minute.
Hmm.
Like I get fired up, I can produce, I can turn it out. It's really bad to know that you can write a 20-page paper in a day.
Hmm.
No one needs to know that about themselves. But once you do, it's easy to replicate, except when you can't.
Mm.
And then there's going to come a time when you really are too exhausted, where you can't get your brain fired up to complete the last minute thing, or
Yeah.
there's too many last minute things, and then I just go into sleep mode.
Mm. Tell
It's
me what
just
sleep mode means to you.
yeah, it's like I'll get so exhausted because there's too many dangling threads or too many last minute things, or it feels too overwhelming. I don't feel like I can chunk it down, or it feels like too much, and I literally just get sleepy. Like I'll usually go to my bed for an hour and
Hmm.
either sleep or rest and then come back and try to manage it. So now there's a lot more tools that I've got at my disposal to be able to do that. But it's not a good combination to be a procrastinator and also be able to pull it off.
Yeah.
Because that does not actually teach me
Hmm.
to be able to back things up. And again, that inability to make a backwards plan, or it's not really an inability, it had been an inability.
Well, and when you say pull it off, it's not that you're not dealing with stress, I
Right.
imagine.
Oh no, it's very stressful.
Yeah. But you just managed to get it done.
Yeah.
And then yeah, it is kind of dangerous to like realize, okay, I can actually wait till the day before and just get this done. But I'll just deal with the stress and the aftermath. And I have a
Yes.
lot of
And
my
the
clients.
aftermath, right.
Yeah, I have a lot of my clients that are like, I just can't do this anymore. I can't continue to do these last minute things. And, it might be because they're getting older or they're just realizing like the stress is not worth it. And that's where they come to me and want help so that they're not doing this. And we work on their time management and breaking these things up. You mentioned you got a coach because of the
Yes.
inability to break things up.
The inability to break things up. And I realized it was really causing stress to my team.
Mm,
And that's not what I want. And I don't want my clients to suffer as a result of that either, even though
yeah.
a lot of that's quite invisible to them. It's just so much calmer if you're doing a launch to have it all complete way ahead
Yeah.
of time when possible. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so learning this, and I think learning to manage the emotions, because there's some shame around it. There's a lot of shoulds that come into our heads. There's I think a story of, well, I've been successful, I have this degree, whatever it is, so I should just be able to do this and figure it out on my own.
Mm.
And when we
I
can't, it
I have a podcast
feels bad.
episode that is I should be able to do this myself. I think is the
Yeah.
title of it. And the point is that a lot of people don't seek help or seek coaching, and because they feel like they should be able to do it themselves. And they
Yes.
spend so much time trying to do it themselves instead of just getting the
Ineffectively,
yeah.
usually.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Instead of just getting the help and like taking the shortcut,
Right.
essentially. But one thing we're kind of nerding out on planners a little bit. I
Oh,
have like really dialed in my time management between like I have a digital calendar and I have a planner. And how this works for me is I'm always open to the month view. And so I'm seeing like big things that are coming. My personal coaching, where I get coached, is in the month view. This is also on my digital calendar, but here it's like out of the black box, I like to call it. The black box could be referring to the computer or my phone or whatever. Once it's in the black box, like the screen is dark, like it's out of my mind.
oh
Um,
yeah, totally.
and so I have like my current to-do lists. People that follow along with me know that I have like a now, not now system with my to-dos, basically. If it doesn't matter very soon, it does not go on my list. It goes on my not now list. And it just sits there and it just waits. And the now list is the things that matter now. And the things that really, really matter ASAP are highlighted. And
Mm.
those are the things that I will make sure I get that done that day. And then the rest of the list kind of sits there and it doesn't stress me out because I'm like, I got the things done that really, really, truly matter. And so that's my system. But you had a planner that you were really enjoying. Tell us about that.
I do. And your system sounds like a modified version of the Eisenhower
Oh, interesting.
matrix.
I
Yeah.
have heard of that and I've probably read it and taken it, absorbed it, and forgot about it.
Yeah, there's four boxes, not two. So I think that's the major
Mm,
difference. Yeah, so this planner is called, well, I'll preface this by saying I'm someone who is always in search of the perfect planner, the one
mm.
that will make me be able to do the backwards plan and chunking things down and
Right.
manage time well. And then they don't exist. So I'm one of those people. I'll have 14 planners. They're all have 2 pages used. But I got
Mhm.
this one, which is designed for people with ADHD, and it's called I'm Busy Being Awesome. So we'll give a little
Yeah.
plug to this ADHD person, Paula Ingebretson. I don't know how to say her last
The first
name.
name was Paula though, and the name is
Paula.
the
Yeah.
name of the
I'm
the
busy being
planner is
awesome.
so clear. Like I think
It
people will find
is.
it if they want it. But it was funny when we were talking before, she's like, "Is this your planner?" I'm like, "No, mine's right here. It's
To
coming." I
be delivered. Yes.
I actually have a former client that we are working on a planner project together, and we've created kind of a Trello board for it and have been kind of dumping our ideas in it. And I've been trying out different planners, and I have a little stack of them behind me of like basically opening them up and going, nope, that's not the one.
Right. Yeah.
But what,
Well,
go ahead.
well, I like this one's undated, so that's really handy.
Yes.
So you never feel sort of shame that there's a month where you didn't fill anything in. But
Hmm.
actually, what was really helpful about this, she has a small little video series to show you how to use it.
Yeah.
And right away, she gives you permission to say, if you don't use every single thing in here, it's okay.
Yeah.
Use what works for you. And the sort of unconscious shame I had about not being able to use a planner correctly was really tangible. And I didn't even know it until that moment in time.
Yeah.
And so now I feel like I have this permission and this freedom to use what works
It's
and
so
experiment.
interesting that she said that because and you talked about the undated things because I've noticed what I have settled on was recommended by a client, and you guys can probably see that. It's the tool planners. And what's interesting about them is when I got this planner, there were some things I just took right out of it. And because it's a disc
Ooh,
type planner, things
yes.
go in and go out very easily. But when I got it, I'm like, I am absolutely never going to use that. That's gone.
Yeah.
Just
It's
sat that
freeing.
aside and had no shame about it whatsoever and was able to like move things to the point where it's like, no, my to-do list really needs to be front and center. Let's put that like right there. But I was saying like kind of a problem that's going into my bank of like, this is not ADHD friendly is now my to-do is kind of covering up part of my monthly plan, which doesn't make me happy. So I'm working on that. But we could nerd out on planners forever, I'm sure. Especially once you get your time management dialed in, guys, you can do anything. And it
It is
took me,
amazing.
I like to tell my clients when we're working on time management, I like to tell them it took me a year of going back to my coach and saying, no, this isn't working. And like working on things and I don't mean that you have to do it with a coach, but what I mean is if you are working on your time management, don't expect it to happen overnight. Don't
Yeah.
expect it to happen in 30 days. Like it may like it did for me, take a full year for it really to be dialed in, where I look at my calendar every day, where everything goes on my calendar, where appointments are always there. There's very few like calendar mistakes that ever happen.
Right.
And so that's just important. It really helps me get a lot done. But one thing I wanted to talk about, I've had a former client who was a shamanic healer, but I'm not real clear on what it is. Could you tell us about it? I think there's some misconceptions. You said that
A
word gets
lot of
thrown around a
misconceptions.
lot. I want to know what that is exactly.
Yeah. So, shaman, the word shaman comes from a Siberian tribe,
Mm,
and it means one who knows.
interesting.
And so that's a broad definition. We now apply the word shaman pretty cross culturally to a particular type of person. I myself am not a shaman, I am a shamanic practitioner. So there's a
Oh,
little distinction there. And
okay.
that the title shaman, for what that's worth, should really come from the community. So the
Mm,
community should recognize that this person is doing significant work, this person is being helpful. In terms of functionality, I'm not sure it really matters. So the distinction doesn't really matter.
yeah.
So I'm a shamanic practitioner that I've been formally trained, and I am someone who myself and then those that I work with, I facilitate opportunities for us to go to the other world, to the spirit world, to
Mm,
collect valuable information and bring it back for the good of the individual and the tribe.
okay. How does that work?
How does that work? So usually it works with me. This is a powerful tool, not the only tool, getting my drum
Mm,
and drumming a little bit to help people get into a slightly altered state of consciousness, and then
okay.
facilitating what we call a journey for them that's appropriate for whatever the problem is that they're having. To go and visit their guides, their angels, their power animals,
Okay.
whatever spirits are wanting to help them.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the guides, the angels, like all of that. I've done a lot of reading and things on that, and it's just so interesting to me.
Yeah, and so that's what I love. That's what I love to do. That's what I'm doing quite a bit of my time when I'm working individually with clients and with groups. And
Is
so the shamanic practitioner then is someone who helps facilitate opportunities for people to have some of these experiences themselves. And if they
Mhm.
can't, then I can do some of that for them.
And is there a certain amount of self-work with this as well?
Always, always,
Okay.
always, always. So the personal healing has to come first, and then we go on our own inward journey, and then we take it to the community. So I've been doing spiritual work professionally for a long, long time now. I'm also an ordained minister. I've been a spiritual coach for about 8 years, and the shamanism piece came relatively late. That's just a few years old now.
Hmm.
But it's completely revolutionized the way that I now approach my clients and the kind of work that I do, the framework
Yeah, and it sounds
that I
like
provide for
so
them.
we're talking about Christianity and would this go right along with Christianity? How does that work?
Well, certainly there's going to be a lot of conservative evangelical Christians who are going to tell you no, that it doesn't. But in my mind, certainly it does, because shamanism in its best state should reduce human suffering
Mm,
and should put people in direct contact with the spirit world as much as possible in
yeah.
order for us to live our best lives, in order for us to make the earth the best place that it can be. So, in terms of Christianity, that's what Jesus does. Jesus is one who
Interesting.
came to earth to reduce human suffering. We have, the stories, whether you take them literally or not, of healings, of good news for the poor, of bringing the good news of bringing the kingdom of God to earth,
Hmm.
and someone who's in direct contact with the spirit world in order to bring, like, literally heaven to earth. So this is shamanism is not about dogma. Shamanism is not a religion in and of itself. It's a form of spirituality that can be practiced in many different religions, in no religion, and across many different cultures.
Very
And every
interesting.
culture will have their own way of doing it.
Yeah. the healing itself, like how does that happen? Is that something that automatically happens? Are there realizations that happen from that? Are there certain things that people learn about and apply to their lives? Like, how does the healing itself happen?
Yeah, so I think this is really contextual and every individual is going to be different. So it depends on what they're bringing. But from my perspective, we all have wounds. Some of us deeper wounds from different parts of our lives that are both emotional and that will have physical manifestations within
Yeah.
us. So with shamanic tools, we can go on a journey to find out maybe the source or the origin of that particular problem and do some healing work with it. Like right before this call, I was working with someone to recover soul pieces that they lost due to a traumatic event from childhood.
Yeah. And some of
So
us aren't going to know what that means exactly. What do you mean when you say soul pieces?
yeah, and so from this is again from a shamanic perspective, but when we experience trauma, whether it's a car accident, whether it's just falling down when we're little, you skin your knees really, really badly, or whether it's because someone deliberately harmed us, with abuse, with fight, with anything that caused harm to us. The theory is that our parts of our soul flee because they want to be safe. They don't feel safe.
Mm.
So a little piece flees here, a little piece flees there. They go to the other world where they're very safe because they're surrounded by spirit. But our soul longs to be unified, it longs to be whole. And so when we can recover these soul pieces and bring them back to us, that's where we experience healing.
Very
So
interesting.
this can be emotional, it can be spiritual, it can be physical, but sometimes healing doesn't mean cure.
Mm. Say more about that.
Sometimes yeah, so sometimes healing means that we are reconciled, that we feel more at peace with ourselves.
Okay.
So I think we have a misunderstanding actually of physical healing, especially in the Western world, that it has to look a certain way, or it means that we live to be 250 or something like that.
Mm.
We sometimes treat death as if it's a moral failure
Mm.
rather than simply part of our life where we're transitioning from this state that we know very well to whatever it is that comes next.
Yeah.
So someone might experience really profound healing on their deathbed, but not be physically cured.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
That makes
So
sense.
emotional resolve, relationships restored, coming to peace with themselves. Maybe they have something that they want to confess from an earlier part of their life that they've never told anyone. That's going to produce dramatic healing, which we want as much healing to happen before death as possible.
Mm.
So there's so many ways that shamanic practices can be beneficial.
Yeah. And did I see in your bio, and I might be incorrect about this, but that you work with professionals and entrepreneurs?
I do, yes.
Okay. And you bring this work into that.
Yes, I do. Because entrepreneurs are such a creative bunch and they're changing the world and they're living. Generally, someone becomes an entrepreneur because they're really passionate about something.
Yeah.
And I know in my entrepreneurial journey, I mean, I came to this from the academic world, which does not prepare you for entrepreneurship whatsoever. But I found that my entrepreneurial journey really invited me to do more healing work that I had no idea that it would do.
Hmm.
And so I find many entrepreneurs are very lonely. They're
Hmm.
very passionate about the message that they want to get out there to the world. And sometimes what's impeding them is their state of unhealing.
Oh, you've just checked every box for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
And you can only get your business as far as you can get yourself,
right.
is what I'm finding anyway.
And it's an
And
extension of you
yeah. And if
and
I
your
want to
energy.
grow the business, I have to grow myself. And so that
I,
sounds like that's what you're helping people do is heal and grow.
yes. Yeah, 1,000% of the time. I don't think that shamanism is the only way to do that, but it's been a very powerful way for me to do it. And when I bring it to others, the people that are attracted to this kind of thing
Mhm.
have benefited from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like to think that there's just something for everyone. And this is
Yeah,
going to be for some people. And so
yeah.
yeah, what have we not talked about that you think would be important for adults, professionals and entrepreneurs with ADHD? What do they need to know from you?
You know, I think what's kind of coming to mind is that, like I said, I come here from the academic world, and I was thinking about procrastination and how many conferences have I been at where people are racing to print out the paper that they're about to deliver
Mm,
in like 5 minutes. So I think
yeah,
that academia, and actually I think the spiritual world too, is filled with people who are neurodivergent and don't know it. Academics are often, not all, but many academics are attracted to a semester, a class, a
that's
syllabus,
structure.
because it's, yeah, structure.
Yeah,
It's very structured, and it's short-term deliverables,
yeah,
right? And so that definitely makes sense to me. In the spiritual world, we can flip sort of from modality to modality to modality and try a little bit of this and try a little bit of that, and this angel and that angel and this religion and that religion. Nothing wrong with that, but we also need to find space to find depth. And so I think if anyone's listening and find yourself in one of these worlds and think that this may be um, of service to you, right? That your neurodiversity is actually a huge help because it drives forward these particular two industries, and is filled with creativity, and that there's
mhm.
space, right? There's space to be spiritual, there's space to be logical, there's space to be academic minded, and kind of bring all the woo and all the practicality together with this layer of creativity, and learn to manage time at the same time.
I remember when I first was talking to my husband about something, and I'm like, "This is kind of woo," and he's like, "It's what?" Did not understand that term. So for people that may not understand that term, what does that mean?
Woo is the sort of way out there thing that you thought you would never do with your spiritual life, and you never thought you'd be holding a crystal, but suddenly you are, and you find that it really helps you. That's a good
Yeah.
definition of woo.
Yeah.
So
For
the
me,
intangibles, yeah.
yeah. For me, what it looks like is reading a book on something that I probably on my own would have never thought like, hmm, these people have a point. Like this, I can see how this
Mm,
would be true. And for me, it would be kind of like out there, but I'm like, I can pull that into my belief system. I can pull that into my everyday life and what I think, is part of what is reality for me. And so that's what that looks like for me. And I'm very open-minded about that kind of thing. I can see truth in a lot of things.
yeah.
And so, yeah, that's for people that don't know. That's what woo is.
So woo is the spirituality you probably don't want to tell your grandma about.
Oh, that's a great
That's it.
definition. How
And if we were in
fun.
the 80s, it was the stuff that Nancy Reagan and Shirley MacLaine were doing.
Really?
But now,
Shirley MacLaine,
yeah,
I
now
could
we've gone a
see,
little.
but Nancy Reagan, really?
She was like really into past lives and energy and like tarot and to that kind of thing, all of which I kind of enjoy.
That's so
But
interesting.
yeah, and so actually Nancy, dear Nancy, I'm not a political scientist, but DC, like in American politics, really tried to veer away from that kind of spirituality for a long time, to disassociate
Mm,
from her, because people were kind of weirded out about it. So I think that's why we've seen such a rise in more explicit conservative evangelicalism to
okay.
counterbalance that all happened directly after Reagan. Because like Reagan didn't care
Yeah.
himself one way or the other, but subsequent presidents have on all sides of the political aisles.
So interesting. You would never think something
Yeah,
like that would get
I know.
political.
Impactful.
All right. Well, I've had a great conversation with you. This has been very fascinating. And I'm sure people can see, like, with the sensory issues that we talked about and the planners and
Oh,
like all the ways where they're like, yes, me too. That's what I love about these interviews and these conversations is I want people to see like you're not weird. Like you're not
no.
alone and it's okay. And there's ways that we can deal with these things. And also see that like, like I said with my husband, like there can be some guilt there and that's okay. And I can just like let that go and go, all right. So it hurts my ears when he whistles.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like
And
it's
he
it
loves you.
exactly.
So
Exactly. And I can watch the way I react about it.
yeah,
For
right.
sure. But where can people find you if they want to like work with you or what? I know you have a freebie, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the easiest way is just to go to my website. So it's soulforgecoaching.org. Soul,
Okay.
SOUL, forge, like the Blacksmith, Forge,
Mhm.
coaching.org. And there I've got a freebie that you can download. It's called Many Pathways, One Journey. And it's some really easy, simple, everyone can do it, ADHD friendly ways to connect to the divine in a very busy world.
Interesting. All right. And how about, are you on Instagram?
I am on Instagram. I'm Rev Dr. Katy, RevDrKaty. None of those are spelled the way you would think they would be. So I'll make sure that you have the link.
Well, and my editor will put it right up on the screen so everybody can
Perfect.
see it. If you're on YouTube, if you're not on YouTube, check out the show notes. It'll be there. But yeah, I just want to thank you for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I
All
appreciate
right.
it too.